Hey guys, Eric here out at the Bethlehem Golf Club. If you're new here, my name's Eric Cogorno. I've been coaching golf for about 14 years now, coach now exclusively online at cogornogolf.com. Would love to see you there if you want to send in your swings and work together. In today's video, we're going to talk about the flat left wrist, why it's important to do it, how to do it, when to do it. We're going to go through some feels, some different options, and my favorite drill for the flat left wrist. Before we dive in, quick word from today's video sponsor. Hey guys, today I want to talk to you about the hanger training aid. I absolutely love this. I firmly believe that this is good for every single golfer. This hanger here creates and controls what I think is the most important part of the swing, which is the wrist angle. It snaps right on. It takes me probably 30 seconds to put on. I can put it right in my golf bag, and best of all is you can hit balls with it. You can actually hit balls with it. So I love this hanger training aids. Look at when I do that well, how that sits on my forearm. Now watch when I cut my wrist, how that comes off. Immediate feedback for where my wrist angle's at. No one that can have too flat of a left wrist. One of the few things that all good ball strikers have, we're trying to have. Flat left wrist, right? Super easy to use, incredible immediate feedback. With the coupon code cogornogolf.com, it's only $59. You're gonna absolutely love it. We'll put all the details down in the description down below. All right guys, so flat left wrist in the golf swing is one of the few things that you would see pretty much across the board in good golf swings. You look at good golf swings, there's a handful of things. They all do to some degree really well, and this is it. Now, flat left wrist, I'm just gonna come up so we can see this. My wrist can be in a couple of different forms, right? My left wrist can be just perfectly flat. My left wrist can be cupped or extended, which is my knuckles towards my forearm. We'll use that reference as we go. Or it can be bowed or flexed, which is my knuckles away from my forearms. So depending upon what's easiest here, we got flat, extension, flexion, right? Or bow, cup. Now, what we see is players have a fairly flat left wrist, so there's not a lot of angle there. Certainly by the time we get to impact. Now the hard part, even if we know we want a flat left wrist at impact, the hard part is we don't set up with a flat left wrist. So sort of the trick here is, when you look at an average good ball striker and they take their lead hand grip, it's naturally set with some amount of cup there. So a little bit of extension. So we know based on the pictures and models we see of great ball strikers that by the time we get to impact, we want that left wrist to be more or less flat. We'll just call it flat to keep this simple. So we've got to go from this cupped angle to flat by impact. Now, why we need to do it is for a couple of reasons. Obviously, that left wrist going from cupped to forward gives us that shaft lean we want. We see good iron strikers get the hands about inside the left leg with the club head back there. That's going to promote solid contact, hitting ball first, ground second. The second is for dynamic loft. So when I take the 7-iron and I cup my left wrist too much, the bad version, knuckles towards my forearm, you can see that puts the handle back. That adds loft to my club. I'm now getting into an impact position where I'm turning my 7-iron into a 9-iron. That would lead to the ball going very short compared to normal and would make my contact very inconsistent, fat and thin shots. And the last thing really has to do with club face angle. So to keep this simple, I just want you to think the flatter or more bowed the wrist is, the more square to closed the club face will be. Whether that's technically true or not, that's what we're going to go with here for simplicity. The more cupped the wrist is, the more open the face would be. So again, we look at this here. If a square club face is the leading edge just straight up and down, the more I bow my left wrist, exaggerating, the toe gets in front of the heel, that would close the club face. And the more I cup it, the more the toe gets behind the heel, which would make the club face more open. We don't want an open club face. We do want a closed club face to give us the downswing pieces we need. So a flat left wrist at impact gives us solid contact, gives us compression, hits the ball solid, far, and straight. We all want those things. The opposite would do the opposite motions. Now the question then becomes the timing and the how of this thing. The timing of this. We said at setup, the wrist is cupped, let's just call it 20 to 30 degrees. Most good players, if we average them all out, would get rid of that 20 degrees of cup and get to flat close to left arm parallel during the backswing. Close to left arm parallel during the backswing. Not everyone, but that would be a ballpark. So we're flattening the left wrist from setup gradually through the backswing to the point where it's flattish at the top. Depends some on your grip, which we'll talk about. And then we also see those players flattening it or moving towards bowing it a little bit more in early transition. So the left wrist is still fairly flat or slightly bowed down to here. Now it's slowly losing that flat towards extension past impact, but by the time we get to impact, that sucker's still flat. And then it gets extended out here. So we're in extension. We're getting it to flat by about here, keeping it flat. A little bit more towards flattening or bowing to here. And then we're slowly going to be losing that past impact. That would be what we would see in like a traditional swing. Now, most people I see struggle, right? So that's the timing of it. You flatten it by left arm parallel during the backswing. I don't mind so much if you do it earlier or later. What really matters is that you get it good coming down into impact. So like if I were to check a golf swing out and I wanted to improve the contact, I would check it first by about here when the club's parallel to the ground and look for the left wrist to be flat and the logo to point down and forward. Then I know from here I can compress it. If I'm too cupped here, especially if the toe's behind the heel, I know this player's going to be in trouble. And then I would backtrack and look at earlier pieces, starting with the backswing and then early downswing. So in reality, even if you had it cupped at the top, I could be okay with that, but then you got to really bow that to get down here. That's really our ultimate checkpoint. I really want to get this flat, logo down, toe on top of or slightly in front of heel, delivery position. That's the most important part. And that's the piece that I really would like to make sure that's good. Now, from there, it's just really a question of like what's easier or what's more difficult. If I know I'm starting cupped and I know I want to get to flat by here, in theory, for most players, it's easier to make sure it's flat during the backswing. So you've got less to do coming down. But if you don't like that going back, you can do it coming down. There's just a little bit more to do, but that would be perfectly fine. Again, the checkpoint and the goal is it needs to be flat by the time you get back down to here, regardless of what you do earlier. So when I get to that delivery position, that's really the piece that I'm feeling. And that's what I would start with here is as I make my downswing, regardless of where I am for this video, I'm going to make sure my left wrist is flat, my logo points level or slightly down, the toes on top of the heel or slightly in front. If I've done those and matched those up correctly, then I should be good in terms of hitting my solid contact. Now, from a feel perspective, there's a couple of feels and then the training aid we like, which is the hanger. Feel number one I would look at would be your knuckles compared to your wrist angles. So anytime my knuckles get farther from my wrist, that would be bowing my wrist. Anytime my knuckles get closer, that would be extending it. So most golfers we see have the wrist too extended. We want them flat, but they need to feel more bowed. Okay, they need to feel more bowed. So when I'm doing this here, because most players we see are too cupped here, a lot of them also will be too cupped here at the top. And so a lot of times we'll train in, hey, let's work those wrist conditions on the way back. Let's get them close to flat so that we have less work to do on the way down. Knuckles farther from the forearm will be feel number one. So progressively throughout my backswing, there's some details here, but to keep things simple right now, progressively the whole time I'm going to be slowly getting my knuckles farther from my forearm all the way to the top. And then I'm going to get my knuckles farther away from my forearm in early transition. So knuckles away from forearm on the way back and on the way early down. That would be sort of simple feel number one. Now, if I don't like that knuckles feel, another thing that we often have success with is referencing the glove logo. So during my backswing, the more I point the logo of my glove towards the camera or behind me, the better my left wrist is. The more I point the logo towards me, the worse my left wrist is. Logo towards me is going to be no shaft lean, open club face, poor contact, poor distance. Logo towards the camera, logo feeling like it's more away from me down towards the ground. So referencing that logo away is another way to feel the same pieces. So either one of those two can be simple feels. Now from a training perspective, and listen, there's a bunch of training aids for your lead wrist and wrist angles that are good. I really like the hanger because it's the best one that I've personally ever used and tested and can hit balls with and get immediate feedback. So I love the hanger. We'll put a link down in the description. You can use promo code, save some money on this. I think it's 69 bucks. It's super good. They have a money back guarantee. Again, it's the best one that I've personally spent time with. I like to set this hanger up just inside my right forearm, and it gives me incredible feedback. So watch this. When I go back, I press the hanger against my left wrist, press it more against my left wrist. I prefer to keep feeling it pressed until about here, to the point where I'm getting it back between my forearms. So I'm feeling the knuckles away from my forearm, same thing. And that just gives me, I mean, that's always as good as I possibly hit it. I literally keep this thing on my 8-iron half the time when we're not filming, and I have this to hit with just to get my feel. So I set it just inside my forearm, keep it inside, so I'm still slightly cupped here during my takeaway, flatten it by the top, flatten it more coming down, and then I'm feeling like I'm holding that on a little bit through impact. The same sort of feels. It's just as good as I can hit it. Now again, in reality, that club by about 45 is in between my forearms. So my left wrist has gone back towards extension. Everywhere that's gonna happen. The point is, most of us do it too early, so you're gonna feel that thing pointed up against there longer than you think, or feel the knuckles farther from the forearm, probably longer than you think. The sign that you've overdone that is the ball's going low and like hooking too far left, which for most of us I think would be a good problem. If you're going low and left, then you can feel like it's throwing a little bit sooner to get to neutral. So I'm pressing it against, and I'm keeping it on. That's just as good as I can hit it. So the feels you're gonna get with this are gonna be relative to where you're coming from. You know, the last little variable here is a lot of this does depend upon your grip. So the grip pattern you have is gonna affect the wrist conditions. The only way you can get away with this left wrist not being flat is if the grip is super strong. So the stronger I turn my grip, so my hand turned away from me, the more cupped my wrist is, I can come down near my delivery position and still have the toe on top of the heel or slightly in front. It's a key club face position while having the left wrist cupped. That's the only time that I can get away with that. Now, if I had a neutral grip here, let's put it neutral, and I cup my left wrist, you can see the face is open. And if I had a weak grip and I cupped it, it's way open. So a strong grip, V way over here by my shoulder, I can get away with some of the cupping. I don't want to get crazy with it. And then the opposite side of that would be a weaker grip. If I had a super weak grip, I have to now really bow my wrist to get that toe in front of the heel. So neutral grip, we want to be flat. That'd be like a Tiger Woods model. Strong left-hand grip, you can have a little bit more cup. That would be more like a Rory McIlroy. Weaker grip, you need to have more bow. That'd be like a Colin Morikawa, John Rahm. So any of those, obviously, all those players can work there. But if we had a neutral grip, V at the collarbone, still slightly cupped, flatten it out by here, flatten it more, flatten it more. Keep pushing the knuckles away from your forearm until the ball is going lower and more left, especially if you miss it to the right. If you're doing that and you don't like left hand feels, you can marry that with right hand feels. So instead of feeling the left wrist bowing, feel the right knuckles getting closer to the forearm. Left knuckles away from the forearm, right knuckles closer to the forearm. The timing remains the same. You're doing a little bit of it during the takeaway, but it's mostly from the takeaway to the top and more in early transition. Second half of the backswing and early transition. Right wrist bent back, left wrist bowed. Depending upon which feels you like better, you can use either one of them. So there's a couple things here, right? And I want to give you those things because they're all relevant. It'd be just overly simplistic for me to say, just keep your left wrist flat. That's not going to be good for everyone. Depends some on your grip, right? Stronger grip, you can get away with more cup. Weaker grip, you must bow. When to do it? The wrist is still going to be cupped during the takeaway a little. It should be flat by about left arm parallel, certainly the top, and in early transition. If you don't like left hand feels, you can use right hand feels. How you know if you've done it too much or not enough, anyone who overdoes this is hitting it good. Let's start with that. Anyone who overdoes this is hitting it good. If I overdid the wrist piece, it would do what, right? We said it controls dynamic loft, so I'd hit it lower, but I hit it really solid. And we said it controls club face, so I'd hit it a little too far left, probably overhook it, okay? That'd be a good problem. Or I need to match my release pattern to that new club face that's more closed. So a couple of things there on the timing of it, the left wrist, the importance of it. I know there's some details. If you want to keep it super simple, buy a hanger, learn how to press the hanger on by the top and a little more in early transition. That'd be the 1 minute version of this video. But for those of you that want the details of it and have questions, that's the deal. It's basically the same with all clubs. Like anything else, you don't know unless you video it, and you're likely gonna need to exaggerate 1,000,000 times more than you think is appropriate. If you want help with your swing, hitting it better, etc. If you like the detail stuff, CogornoGolf.com, send in your swings, we can work together. We'll put another card on the screen, similar style video. Hope you enjoyed this. If you did, you can click that like button for us, share it with a friend who needs it, leave any comments down below. Would love to hear what you think, and thank you guys for watching.